Hey, Texas Values friends, Jonathan Sines here, president of Texas Values. Hey, I'm back with you again. It was like we were just on Facebook Live, but it's a special day, so we're doing a special segment. We had a conversation earlier in the day through Facebook with Senator Brian Hughes, who is the author of the Texas Heartbeat Law in the Senate. And so we had an opportunity today to have another discussion on that important issue. And we said, you know what, we're going to take it. Because the person that we've got on now, we had an opportunity to talk with, is the Texas Heartbeat Law author in the House. And that is Representative Shelby Slawson. And we're so excited to get a little bit of time on Facebook to talk with her. So before we start the conversation, like it, share it, put it up in your groups. Let's get a lot of activity on it, because this is a special conversation that we have not been able to get this week because she's been very busy. Many of us have, because it's been a special week. And September 1st was a special day, because on that day, the first ever heartbeat law went into effect. Now, other heartbeat laws have been passed in other states, but they never got to their effective dates. Not so for the state of Texas. And a big reason that we got to that date is because the leadership of elected representatives, specifically Representative Shelby Slawson. Representative Slawson, thanks for being with us today to talk about this important issue, your Texas heartbeat law.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be here, and what a beautiful week in Texas for millions of unborn Texans.
Well, there's no doubt about that. I've been asked about this issue and pro-life issues over the years, and it's always like the media is trying to find out what is really behind this. What are you really up to? Why are you really motivated to do this? And that answer is always simple to me. It's about saving lives. That's what it's always been about. It's about saving lives, about recognizing the preciousness of life and protecting it. The heartbeat law, as many people probably know by now, if the unborn baby's heartbeat is detected, that life is protected. It's pretty simple. TexasHeartbeatLaw.com. Go to that website to find out more information. Representative Slawson, this was your first legislative session. And here you are. Briscoe Cain filed this bill before. He filed it again, but he got real involved with working on election integrity issues. I know you just finished a special session on that, and he seemed to be very busy. He really cared about this issue. And the next thing you know, he's saying, hey, why don't you carry the Texas heartbeat law? That's where this journey started, I know, in a lot of ways for you, but not your protection of life and your interest on that issue. But wow, what an amazing first session. And what a week I bet it's been for you to see all this come together.
It's been incredible, and exactly what you just said. There's been so much work that has gone on in the legislature well before I showed up. Just a passionate mom and gal up in Central Texas who believes in that sanctity of life, and to be able to join the kind of team that was already in place and work with Briscoe Cain and with Brian Hughes has been invigorating. You know, they're both energetic, passionate leaders, and it has just been an amazing experience. And it's not just those elected officials either. It's all the synergy that came from our different groups across the state that work on pro-life issues all year round too. And it's the men and women who are in our mission fields back home, working with those women and those babies and coming down to the Capitol to share testimony and advocate themselves. It's been incredible.
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, a bill becomes a law through a lot of different steps. You know, they say at the Capitol a lot of times it's easier to kill a bill than it is to pass a bill. And I've been doing work there since 2007. I see it all the time. And, you know, it's easy for people to look back now and think about this issue and think, a lot of people supported it. They really see where we are now. And it's significant. September 1st, first ever heartbeat law to go into effect. Other states have tried it. They get hung up in the courts. This one's different. You're a lawyer, and you don't have to be a lawyer to appreciate the legal significance of that, but sometimes we do a little bit. And so that effective date comes September 1st. And not only did we get to the effective date, and the Texas heartbeat law being the first heartbeat law to get to a date like that, to start being able to use it, to enforce it and save those lives, but we had a Supreme Court decision on that same day, right? The U.S. Supreme Court, they didn't weigh in until real late in the day, but they eventually did say something, and they made a decision to not get in the way of this law going into effect when there was a lot surrounding this, and they a lot of people certainly thought they might and could, and they were being asked to do that. We mentioned it in our press release that the Texas heartbeat law passes a judicial test, and it was. I mean, this has hit the trial court, the federal court of appeals, all the way up to the U.S. Supreme Court. And we know, there may be aspects of this legally that are not over, but for now, we can rest that our heartbeat law is in effect after the Supreme Court taking a look at it. And so that is very significant. And so your background as an attorney really mattered through this process, but also your heart, right? I mean, and I'm not using that word intentionally. That is the appropriate word. Your heart is in this issue. And that's why it mattered to you, your steadiness, your presence, for you to shepherd it and lead it through the House. You did a wonderful job.
Well, that's very gracious of you. I'll tell you that we work on a lot of things in Austin. Most of what we work on is of just that temporary consequence. It may affect our state for the next year, for the next 5 years, or the next 10 years. But when it comes to this particular bill, I think everyone involved in working it through the process would agree that this bill has an eternal consequence. And so there was a much different gravity to every step of the way, and the things that it took to work as a team to get it across the line. And when you talk about that evening when we got that Supreme Court ruling, boy, think back to the 24 hours before that. I'm sure that you, like we, were seeing on social media the night before this went into effect, the just heartbreaking stories of clinics throughout this state just glorifying packed waiting rooms, and that they were rushing to end as many lives as they could before midnight. And Jonathan, it made me sick and it hurt my heart. But the light shone on that. And the next morning, the sun rose and that Heartbeat Act went into effect. And that next morning, we began protecting those precious lives. Now, I don't know about y'all, but we weren't expecting a ruling that same day from the Supreme Court. But the joy that rippled through the circles of pro-life that evening was just an incredible juxtaposition to where we had been just 24 hours before that.
Well, and in our statement, we said it was a historic day for law and life, because it does matter what the law says, right? You're a lawmaker as a legislator. We know that it has an impact on society. We know that a lot of people will decide what to do based on what the law says. Their concept of morality is sort of wrapped up into what is legal and what is not legal. As I was taught in law school, the law is a teacher, and it's also an expression of what we think about the most vulnerable. And an unborn child certainly can be vulnerable and has been vulnerable. 55,000 abortions approximately every year being performed just in the state of Texas. And I'll tell you what, I was up late Tuesday night, then I was up late Wednesday night, as I was mentioning to Senator Hughes earlier, going through a roller coaster of emotions, because this is a life and death issue at the heart of it. To really not purposely use that word, that is the word, right? I mean, there's so much wrapped in that word, in that concept, and what it means just physically. And so I would love to hear more about that, from your perspective, right? I mean, all the hard work was really done. Your role was sort of finished in some ways because the law had already been passed. Governor Abbott had already been signed it, and we're all there waiting, right? Probably like me, praying. And so I just, I can imagine what this week, but what that day was like for you, knowing that every bit of hard work that you put into it to defend it, to describe it, to help people understand it was all worth it.
Well, it was interesting Tuesday night, because even as we sat there listening to reports of how they were trying to proceed with as many abortions as possible before midnight, there was also the recognition that upon midnight, this new law took effect. And so there's, even in that darkness, there's this hope of the end of that is coming. And even they realized it, which Jonathan, we used a very unique approach in this law with a private enforcement mechanism, specifically because we already had governmental actors who were pledging they would not enforce this law. Had this been a different tool that relied upon a state actor, I don't know that Tuesday night we would have seen the same reaction from those groups. They probably would have just proceeded as though it were any other Tuesday.
Yeah, well, look, and they were running if you will, to those sources that they've used in the past, right? Those government entities, those government actors sort of, to come to their rescue, if you will. And that option was not available. And the U.S. Supreme Court recognized that. That was a key reason why they made the decision not to get involved and stop the Texas heartbeat law, because legally, right? And if the law matters anywhere, it should matter at the U.S. Supreme Court, particularly procedurally. They realized we can't get involved in this issue. This is a different circumstance, and they've got to look at it differently. And to their credit, at least 5 of them did. And that's why we're now at day 3 when we're doing this live and also recording it, of the Texas heartbeat law going into effect. Some estimates are anywhere between 100 to 30, 150 days of lives statistically being saved based on what we know the numbers were in the past years of 55,000 abortions being performed, 85 to 90% of those abortions, if not virtually many more, that will not take place because of the Texas heartbeat law. TexasHeartbeatLaw.com is the website if you want to learn more. But, I shouldn't be surprised that this issue can be emotional. If you think about knowing, as you knew, at midnight, and that's a key, this is a great point you illustrated, right? Knowing there was a lot of things going on that were heartbreaking up to that point, but that at 12:01 or 12 a.m., right, we had the ability to stop that. And many of those abortion clinics are acknowledging they're going to follow the law.
Yes, they are doing that exactly. It's also a curiosity in some respects that some of those clinics who have told us for so many years that abortion is not a fundamental part of their practice, it isn't what they derive most of their funds from, are now saying that without this particular procedure, they're not going to be able to continue to serve clients without the revenue from that. How starkly different than what we have been told for so very long before.
Yeah, I would say it's telling. It tells us a lot about what really their focus is, that if they can't perform abortions, or the large majority of abortions that they usually perform, that they're going to go out of business. That tells us their complete existence revolves around and is centered on the taking of innocent human life. And that's exactly what it is. I just want to thank you too for your leadership, the team, your team there on the ground at the Capitol, and others that were a part of supporting you. Did such fantastic work. We're going to have many more conversations. All of us are on these issues. We're going to continue to educate people, because now there's just this increased demand and interest about this law, how it works. The abortion side, they're not going to stop trying to find a way to take it down, even though we've gotten off to a really good start. There is plenty of work ahead of us, but nothing wrong with taking a moment to acknowledge and recognize the significance of getting to this point. In day 3, if you will, the Texas heartbeat law going into effect. So thank you for your leadership, and thank you so much for the leadership of your team. I know you've had a busy week with the special session just wrapping up, and there's probably another one around the corner. You're back at home trying to get some rest. We're going to pray for you. We're going to pray for your team, and we're going to continue to do everything we can to express that gratitude for your leadership on this important issue of life.
Well, that's very kind, and I appreciate that so much. And I look forward to continuing to work with you and Texas Values and moving on ahead.
All right. Well, look, that's going to wrap it up for today on this Facebook Live. Thank you again to Representative Shelby Slawson, who is the Texas House author of the Texas heartbeat law. And if you want to learn more about the law, go to TexasHeartbeatLaw.com. And if you want to invest in our work is not done on this issue. That is clear, but it took a lot of financial support to put people in place to get to this point. We still need to do more. Please consider making a donation, a tax-deductible donation at txvalues.org, so we can continue the work that we do for faith, family, and freedom, and we can continue to protect our wonderful Texas heartbeat law. That does it for today. Enjoy the rest of your day and enjoy the rest of your week. God bless you, and God bless Texas.